Diablo 4 devs just gave us a bunch of new information. We also have a potential Season 1 confirmation date. BlizzCon is also around the corner. We'll probably get a bunch of updates there. We got a couple new issues that need to be addressed, especially with Sorcerer. We have another big tool release for Diablo 4, and a whole bunch more. We got a lot to talk about. What's up, world? We're back in another video, checking out all things Diablo 4. Okay, so first up, let's just jump into some of the issues that people have been having specifically for the actual PC release. And it seems like we have some sort of VRAM leakage or some VRAM issue, whereas the game actually plays longer the more VRAM it uses. And there's actually a post here on the subreddit that showcases the Diablo 4 PC performance degradation over time. We finally have some evidence here where after a couple minutes, we are already seeing insane amounts of VRAM leakage. Now this person tested it on a 3070, a 12700 KF, 32 gigs of RAM, clocked at 5600 megahertz. So yeah, this guy's got a really good setup, or at least somewhat decent for mid to high range. And he showcases here that there's actually an insane amount of VRAM leakage just a few minutes into the game. And he'll go from 164 to 140 stable FPS, all the way down to 80 to 100 just after 2 or 3 dungeons. So there's clearly some shading issues as well as probably a VRAM leakage. I've also noticed with my 8GB card that it tends to either make my shadow play not work. I've had driver crashes, I've had blue screens. And yeah, this is kind of a first for me. The only other game that gave me a lot of issues was Hogwarts Legacy, and that was mostly down to RAM. I only had 16 gigabytes of RAM back then, and I went out and bought some CL16 3600 megahertz 64 gigabytes of RAM. It's basically perfect clocks that you can get on DDR4, and yeah, so I shouldn't have any issues as far as RAM goes either. So this game definitely does have a VRAM issue and not necessarily a RAM issue. As I don't know if you guys saw, during the beta, this game actually used 21 gigabytes of RAM, and I actually had 32 gigabytes of RAM kit that I sent back because I was so worried that Diablo 4 was going to run this harsh. And yeah, it already does, but the 64 gigabytes of RAM didn't help. So hopefully this is looked at, as a ton of people talking about the VRAM leakage. I know there's also some problems on PlayStation as well as even maybe Xbox, but yeah, PC definitely has some major issues that need to be looked at. And we also have some glaring issues with the Sorcerer, as there's several glyphs that just don't do anything. There's a winter glyph node that doesn't do anything for cold damage or anything like that. There's nothing in range for it to even act upon. And the 2 or so damage reduction nodes don't even get buffed. So the glyph doesn't even work. So yeah, the winter glyph on the Sorcerer doesn't do anything at all. Definitely not worth leveling up there, or at least using as a glyph currently. A lot of people saying that the Sorcerer needs to be completely reworked. Really struggling on endgame aside from maybe Uber Lilith with a very specific Blizzard build. So I definitely hope they look at the Sorcerer because yeah, it is a pretty rough class right now overall for the endgame play. However, we do have that new DPS tool that will allow you to calculate out your damage for specific classes. However, they're still in the works, as things like conjuration damage get calculated in. If you're not taking any conjuration spells, then yeah, it wouldn't improve your damage. So there's a few things they need to work out the kinks there for. However, it's a pretty cool damage tool overall, and it definitely will help people, I think, in the future. So I'll leave a link down below to that tool. There's a ton of stuff on the Reddit here too that gives a bunch of explanations for everything in the tool. So I'll leave a link to both of those, both the tool and the Reddit thread, to kind of go through and find out information for it. Now, Sorcerers honestly can't win with this game so far, and they actually do get less XP than any other class. What do I mean by that? Well, essentially, if you do end up downing those spider host mobs, especially if you were doing blind burrows farming like myself, if you actually freeze those mobs and you don't allow them to spawn little spiders, you get a ton of XP loss. In fact, it's over half of the XP that you would earn from that mob specifically goes to those spider hosts that come out after the spider host explodes. So essentially, if you're freezing a mob that will spawn more mobs, you actually do get a lot of less XP. Kind of crazy they don't calculate that in for you when you down that specific spider host mob, whatever mobs that they would spawn. However, overall it does make sense, and maybe with timing it might even be somewhere near the same. But there's definitely an issue with blind burrows farming and sorcerers getting a lot less XP. Now, as far as the PC issues go, as far as the rest of those issues go, we did have some issues supposedly with the latest NVIDIA driver. However, this could be due in part to not using DDU. Essentially, with every new driver update, you need to use DDU, which is display driver uninstall. It's recommended to use on the NVIDIA subreddit, as well as many other people's recommendations on a lot of these tech support channels. You should always use DDU before installing a new driver. You need to launch into safe mode, launch up DDU, it will uninstall all your drivers, then you'll relaunch back in. You probably want to unplug your internet cable, otherwise Windows will automatically install driver 512. After you do that, you can install the driver and then plug in your internet cable. But you should always do this, otherwise you're gonna run into driver issues, and even with AMD as well, but it's always recommended with NVIDIA. So just make sure when you go go to install a new driver, you uninstall your current driver using DDU in safe mode. I'll have a link to DDU down below if you want to use it. And we also did get a possible confirmation on when we will be seeing the Season 1 update, which actually coincides here with a tweet of about BlizzCon that's happening on July 8th. So we're probably going to get a ton of new info on the Season 1 for Diablo there, as the header image actually has Lilith in the background, so we're for sure going to get some new information on it. So we had a question here from ZS Man who asked, wonder if Diablo 4 Season 1 will coincide with the con. And Adam Fletcher responded here saying that Season 1 is a mid to late July. And they keep pushing mid to late. I really do hope that it's mid-July now after everything, as a lot of people, including myself, are running out of things to do. I've taken down Uber Lilith, and I was going to post a build video specifically for Uber Lilith. However, I end up running the exact same build as Narwhal, or at least that max roll guide. I basically used his Paragon board and the nodes. So essentially, I've run out of things to do in the game, and yeah, I've already grinded up all my glyphs. There's really not much for me to do left. I know most people still have to work up their stuff. However, I really do hope we get a Season 1 update sometime soon. Now, finally, we do have some addressing of the color of the cursor. I know for a lot of us, including myself, I've wanted to change the color of the cursor. As a sorcerer with my blizzards going on, I lose my cursor all the time. I don't want to make it bigger, as I think the bigger version looks kind of clunky. So yeah, I just want to change the color of it just to like either like a blue or like a pink, so it's visually kind of easy to see. We actually did have Adam Fletcher here respond to a tweet saying that the team has seen the feedback and it's planned for a future update. Really, really good to hear there. I'm glad we are getting the option to change the color of the cursor eventually. However, someone also pointed me to a new program that I might end up buying, but it's called YOLO Mouse, which allows you to change your mouse color for practically any game. Seems like a pretty cool idea. I might have to look into it. I'm not a huge fan on the mouse shape, but there might be more that I need to look into. I've only seen like a little brief screenshot of it, but it does look pretty cool, and it would be nice to use probably with Diablo. I'll have a link down below. It's a Steam game essentially. It is a paid-for product for right now, but it's only $3.99. But yeah, if you do have some mouse color concerns and it's hard to find your mouse, this could definitely help you. We also had a pretty good suggestion here about the world bosses. Essentially, the world bosses really don't provide enough loot, especially after you down them for the week. You just get the one-time grand cash. Someone suggested here that the grand cash should drop every single time. Yeah, I definitely agree. There's not even much from it anyway. Also with Uber Lilith, the first time that you down her, she doesn't drop anything after that. Makes absolutely no sense that you can't even farm her or do anything. She's already a pretty hard boss. She only drops you, I mean, the mount you get is pretty nice, but she just drops you like 2 legendaries usually. And yeah, it's pretty underwhelming loot, so I hope they like add or incentivize that a lot more, especially for the new season. We'll have to wait and see on all that. There's a lot of things in this game I really do hope they improve on for Season 1, and I hope it comes sooner than later. But that is about cover for today's video. If you enjoyed it, like and subscribe, and it's the next one. Deuces.